Before we start, if you guys find these types of videos informative, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and click that bell to receive more videos like this.
Hove turned Apple in the title.
It's your boy Crypto Blood, and welcome to another Kicking It session. Today we've got a returning guest, Drew Harden from Pillar Project. He's actually the Chief Product Officer over there at Pillar Project, so it's great to have him back on. I was just like, hey man, let's chat it up and talk about blockchain, and
sure.
I mean, we talk about Pillar as well, but I just wanted to have him back on because it was such a great experience having you on. What was it, about 5 months ago maybe?
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about time flies, but
Right.
yeah, probably definitely earlier this year at some point.
Yeah, something like that. So we're playing this, he picked DJ Shadow. He actually dropped this in the chat room for me to check out this album. We're checking out DJ Shadow, been used to with Pusha T on there. I like it. I like Pusha T.
Yeah, I'm a Seattle kid, born and raised, so I got a special place in my heart for DJ Shadow.
Gotcha. Dope, man. So again, it's great to have you on, man. What's been up? In your opinion, has a lot changed since we last talked? It's just far as in general, like in the crypto industry for Pillar, kind of give me an update.
Yeah, Pillar's doing really well. I'm extremely pleased with everything we've accomplished this year. We're coming up on the end of the year, obviously, and we're already starting to prep for our 2020 roadmap, and then reflecting back on kind of what I outlined in the beginning of this year for 2019. It looks like we're going to hit basically all our targets minus a couple. Right now, we're actually internally testing Bitcoin support. It's basically live and working. We're just working through a handful of UI, UX issues. Also considering how we want to do the key management and the wallet management in terms of like an HD, where one kind of backup phrase can restore all versus allowing independent backup phrases for each wallet, which would allow users to independently import each type of chain wallet or different chain wallets and stuff like that. So
I'm on the site. I haven't even been to the site, and I probably, since I had you on, I see you guys redesigned it. It looks cleaner.
Yeah,
looks like much more like corporate, professional. I don't know. That's just the vibe I get.
We updated that going into ETH Berlin because we had these big announcements around the smart contract wallet, the smart wallet, and our Pillar payment network. Both of those are now live through our early access program. And yeah, we're going through like a kind of a complete revamp right now on both the site, some of our kind of like branding, positioning, messaging, as we start to evolve beyond kind of like baseline wallet functionality. That becomes pretty important in terms of how we convey our product, our offering, and everything. So this is actually going to get even more enhanced very shortly here. So
nice. So what's going on with David Siegel? Is he still around? I saw he started a new channel and was doing a new. Like I said, I'm just getting all the information from you and the audience. Yeah. I don't know if they keep track with the Pillar Project, but what's David Siegel's position in everything? Is he still pretty active or no?
Not on the day to day. So he was CEO, kind of steering the ship, and then kind of took a step back to more of a chairman position. He was exploring a lot of initiatives, especially around like regulation, government, trying to get in front of some of these big players and explain to them, educate them on the benefits of this technology and what this can do for society and culture. His direct involvement on the day-to-day with Pillar is basically been kind of it's kind of non-existent at this point.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
it kind of seemed that way, but I was just curious and didn't know
Yeah, he's been working a little bit more closely with the 2030 side, which is like, again, our sister company. But and we've been kind of clearly delineating and separating those two organizations throughout this year, which is kind of by necessity due to the fact that they're playing in a regulated space, working really closely with FCA, London Stock Exchange Group, etc. And we're more on the open source, foundation based. So it's they had to actually kind of insulate and protect themselves from that standpoint, and we don't have those same restrictions kind of placed on us. So we've seen management structures continue to shift, including that of David.
So speaking of like the team management, C-suite or whatever, how I know last time we talked, one of my criticisms of Pillar was the fact that you guys had a lot of volunteer work, like that was a big, that took up a big chunk of your staff. How is that evolving? I know you said that was changing even then when we did the interview. How is that coming along?
Yeah, basically that died in 18 really.
Gotcha.
So we haven't. It's definitely not a policy we've continued by any means throughout this entire year. Everybody who's working with us are either contractors, dedicated contractors, or direct employees. And then kind of also, as I touched on in our previous chat, we're doing a lot of work with other teams, other projects. Really, our partner outreach and collaboration has skyrocketed, and I think that's been a huge benefit to us.
So I've got a question for you. I did see in the Webbot room maybe 2 months ago, someone was talking about Pillar's Runway as far as your funds and how far you guys are going to be able to go with this.
Right.
Let's talk about, if you can, talk about Runway. How much padding do you guys have, and how do you make money? Like, what's the path to profitability and revenue with Pillar? What are your plans with that?
So currently, I don't have the exact numbers right now, but we have around 2 years of like fiat runway to cover the company's expenses and whatnot. We also have a chest of ETH from the ICO, which has actually been diversified into like other holdings, other crypto holdings and whatnot. We have a fairly large reserve of Pillar tokens, but those are actually on lockup, which is another thing I touched on in the chat the other day. And those are actually designated on a 10-year lockup at the point of ICO. So in terms of actually the number of Pillar tokens we have in our control right now, it's actually quite limited comparatively. And in my opinion,
you shouldn't be liquidating Pillar. To me,
you
shouldn't be liquidating Pillar tokens anyway to keep afloat. That should have been. And I've seen this though with many ICO projects. They start liquidating their tokens, and it's like, well, what the hell did you do with the funds that were raised in the ICO?
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted to like touch on that in the sense that we even if we wanted to, we basically can't at this point,
right.
And that's not really something we're looking to do. We are looking to utilize that supply and in terms of incentivizing our users directly on platform and kind of allowing that to both allow for the Pillar tokens, instead of they being out on exchanges and speculated, to be actually used like within our platform. The first of which in terms of those initiatives will be a fairly large referral program. So users will be rewarded in Pillar for inviting, and then for new users who are setting up a new account. And that's likely to kick off in the beginning of this next year sometime. In terms of the revenue model currently, we at the exchange level, with certain partners, we're taking a small cut when exchange happens. We have some other pretty interesting ideas for new revenue models, but we're trying to keep most of that stuff away from being kind of like subscription based or paid for on the user side. But we're exploring a couple opportunities in how to like create a more, I guess, pro or higher level offering that might come with some sort of a fee based designated in Pillar beyond just like the baseline, if you will. But for us, it's really been, especially this year, a focus on core foundational technology and really getting things prepped. I mean, I still believe we're super early in this situation, and the industry is extremely nascent, and we're just starting to now evaluate and scratch the surface of the identity side of this all and how we layer that into our offers engine to evolve that beyond just like a simple token swap offering and exchange offering to actual commerce offers and merchant-based offers that users can be incentivized by and participate in. So those are, I think, going to open up a lot of new opportunities for us from a revenue standpoint, and also economic benefit and opportunities for our users as well, which would be like the main goal.
Gotcha. So another question I just thought about actually was regarding FATF and that whole regulatory situation. You guys complying with that financial, what is it called? Financial, I can't remember the name of what
I'm not sure. Is that a UK body or is that?
Well, I think primarily it is.
Maybe EU. Honestly, yeah, I don't blame you. It's kind of hard to keep up with all.
So many acronyms, but there is one that, financial crimes, some type of, I think it is out of the EU, but their arm kind of, their jurisdiction, they're global, but I think they're out of the EU.
Our situation in terms of like the regulatory side, we obviously
Financial Action Task Force. That's what it is.
Got it. And they're primarily charged with like, what are their core responsibilities, I guess?
So they're organization devoted to combating money laundering and terrorism financing. And I know that they have been. I don't even know if it's maybe a organization more so than it is FATF rules. I know that the reason I brought it up is because they've been kind of going after wallets and really pressuring them to comply with
probably KYC.
Well, wallets don't necessarily have KYC,
right?
But many of them don't. But they do have some metadata about their users. And if FATF or whatever the organization were to ever come to them, they would be obligated to kind of give that information up, the information they do have on the user. And I was just wondering if you guys are even dealing with that in any level.
No, yeah. We have no kind of like open focus or investigation by any means on us from like any body. We're aware of like the ever evolving landscape. Obviously, we have a very close relationship with the UK and FCA through our work, primarily again with our sister company in 2030. We are a Swiss foundation, so most of our jurisdictional compliance issues lie with that. And one thing I know that a tremendous amount of effort has been put into and a lot of diligence on our side is making sure all our books are accounted for, the funding, the raise, our tax issues. And that's, I mean, it's a requirement from like the Swiss regulators, obviously on their side. The big kind of ever evolving question mark from my side is really the SEC and their lack of guidance. So we don't really know when or if or how they might kind of change their tune at any point. So that's always a kind of a frustrating standpoint. The UK did also just announce that they're going to treat crypto like property, which actually really helps in terms of just understanding the like the restraints and possibilities around how this stuff can be utilized and how to deal with it at a tax level. But yeah, it's kind of just something we just have to remain cognizant of and continue to see where we need to change, if at all. But at the same time, like, you know, our goal is to really enable users to have better control over kind of their own information. And we don't necessarily want to sit as a centralized provider or of services in this stuff. In certain cases, we do so kind of in an intermediate standpoint to enable certain technologies or while testing things. But for instance, how we've built our social graph, it's completely private and opaque to us. So if a triple letter agency came to us and said, hey, we want all the information on X user, or we want to know all the people they're connected to, or we want to know who they're talking to, this isn't actually information we could even provide based on how we've actually architected our system. So good for our users, you know, hopefully doesn't put us in a bad position, but at the same time, it's kind of like, look, we're not, it's out of our hands in a sense. And that's why we also used kind of end-to-end encrypted messaging, and why we've delayed the identity development work to some extent, because we want to make sure we're working within like the evolving standards that are coming out of just the industry and other, you know, projects. Those are getting better and better, especially from a security and anonymity standpoint, around like ZK snarks and a lot of these privacy protocols, privacy preserving protocols. So we want to make sure that we're, again, taking steps to empower our users with new utility, but also preserve their privacy. And, you know, because
at the end of the day, man, that's what it's all about. And I think we've gotten so far away from, you know, I say sometimes like the whole operative word in crypto is cryptography. Like that's the whole point. And, you know, so it's just good to see that, you know, there are still organizations out there like Pillar who want to protect that aspect of this industry, and it needs to be.
It's a challenge too, because, you know, the stance of, you know, screw you guys, we're over here, we're going to build completely private tech, we're going to completely change the system, we're going to go a completely different way. They don't like that, right?
No, they don't.
And it makes it really hard. You know, it's like an uphill battle. You know,
because the governments will paint you in a bad light, and then the consumer won't even want to deal with you because they'll feel like they're doing something wrong. So you're right. It's a catch-22.
And on the flip side too, right? Like working with those entities, having open conversation, helping to educate them about how what we're doing is to their benefit. You know, we're living in this age where data is becoming a liability. We're seeing we're directly having conversations with corporations and government entities that they don't even want to hold or house the data anymore, user data, because of things like GDPR and in California, like California Privacy Act stuff. And there's all sorts of things like that. So, you know, being able to help educate, help them to see and understand why we're doing the things we are. And you know, the rules are changing a bit. So it's kind of somewhere in between that, like, all right, we're over here making like crazy tech and it's going to be completely private and you're going to have no visibility and some of this like, okay, well, how do we ensure that you guys feel like the boxes are being ticked and, you know, you have visibility into what you need without it just being an open window into somebody's life? Because then we get into the real dystopian nightmare possibility of blockchain being this like ledger where all transactions are tracked and then, you know, correlated against real life identities. That's not something I want to see. I think that's something that we'd all like to avoid inevitably.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I agree totally. What else is going on with Drew Harden outside of Pillar? I see you wearing this
Yeah.
chili pepper thing. I saw it on your Twitter. I'm like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
Meta Cartel what is that all about? Tell us a little bit about those endeavors.
Yeah. As far as ETH and like the Ethereum community goes, I think it's fairly safe to say this has kind of been the year of the DAO. And this is not to say like there was the DAO back, which caused the hack and the forking and led to Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. And I think as a result of that, DAOs and that whole idea and concept kind of got a black eye a little bit. So only in the last kind of, I guess this year, a lot of work has been going on during this time, but in this last year, we've really seen an emergence of many different DAO styles and types. For those who don't know, DAO, it's an acronym for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. Putting all the jargon aside, it's really just using blockchain and smart contracts to enable more efficient human coordination. And so, in the sense of we can, as individuals who believe in, it could be any initiative. Most of this stuff is focused on crypto kind of goals at this point. So for Metacartel specifically, our focus is on the application layer of blockchain and Ethereum development. So exciting and novel and valuable use cases for consumers and really exploring how we can do better with the user experience, how we can make it more digestible, accessible, etc.
Gotcha.
We just loose group of individuals. There's about 45 official members now. The community is probably like 300 strong. And we just pool funds. We're essentially a grant giving organization. We get together, weekly calls, events, various places, and we identify projects and individuals and teams that are doing innovative things that we think can really help move the needle. And we vote to fund those and to give them support both fiscally and socially. And what's been great about that is you've seen the community really unite. And it's, the rising waters kind of situation. We're very action oriented. And you've seen everybody from like Vitalik and Joe Lubin now start getting involved and contributing to some of these DAOs to see it's being utilized to further ETH2 research, et cetera, et cetera. So you're seeing the community work together to really start to push innovation beyond just like the Ethereum Foundation or some of these like designated organizations, if you will. DAOs as a concept, I think, are really, really fascinating. I think they have the potential to bring in mass adoption to some extent. Because again, they just enable simple human coordination, and especially when it comes to governance and kind of allocation of funds. And this becomes useful for everything from as extreme as protester groups and people who are fighting for freedoms in their respective nation states, and by having this kind of flat hierarchy governance model, there's no head to cut off, even if you wanted to as mundane as a group of individuals looking to put up a community garden or erect a playground in their neighborhood, kind of like a parent-teacher organization or association type play. So, and we're starting to now explore the revenue generating possibilities of these things, where we're not just grant giving and coordinating how to spend money and build things or achieve goals, but how we can actually then become an entity that's able to be sustainable and bring in profits without violating securities laws and dealing with accredited and sophisticated investor rules and restrictions and stuff like that. So that's also exciting too, because it opens up possibilities for average Joe, you and me, to participate in the upside of and invest in kind of like venture-based opportunities. So that's cool.
Yeah. No, that's dope, man. That sounds very exciting. And I think the whole DAO thing definitely plays an integral part in blockchain evolution and resilience, I think, as well, right?
Sure.
I had on the screen here.
Yeah.
I'm sure you heard about this situation. What's your take on this whole thing?
Yeah,
Virgil?
Yeah, it's, again, a lot of this is hearsay, right? We're all like living on the word of crypto Twitter for a lot of this stuff. So it's noting that, yeah, my understanding is, he went to North Korea, gave a presentation around the possibilities of blockchain technology and value asset transfer and whatnot, which quickly became, you're teaching them how to evade sanctions, right? Which is a huge no-no in the eyes of the states, probably others as well. As far as
I heard that, I didn't know this, but North Korea has like $3 or $4 billion worth of Bitcoin reserve.
I've heard this as well. Yeah. Again, hearsay.
And that's at current prices,
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I heard about that back in like 14, 15, that they were one of the major state players kind of getting involved and seeing the opportunity purely because of sanctions, likely, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
you see what Venezuela's doing. You see.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I guess he even applied or told them he was going to be going over there, and they said, don't go, especially for the subject matter that you're going to be discussing. But it's hard to say. Like, I find it hard to believe that he was in a room of government officials being like, this is how you skirt the sanctions, right? Versus,
right, because I'm sure they already know how to do that. Like, they're pretty advanced.
It's kind of like, you kind of think it's like, or they could just go on Google, which I know they have restrictions on internet services.
No, but North Korea has a lot of they know what they're doing over there, man.
It's kind of like, I find it hard to believe that they needed someone like him, an expert like him, to come in and explain these things. So I don't know if this is just a way, and that is kind of the problem, is the backlash from a media standpoint and the black eye that all of the industry receives as a result of this it sucks, right? And at the same time, like, we're a lot of us are idealists, and we believe that this is a technology that's for the masses. There's a lot of problems and inefficiencies in finance and in money, in currency, and so for an individual to get out there on the soapbox and explain to others how they can use this stuff is kind of just like a natural part and parcel of being in the space.
As you stated, this technology is for the masses, for the people. But that being said, many organizations and governments don't like that, because if that's the case, if there's a technology that's for the people, then that means a redistribution of power and wealth,
right, at
some point. So I can, I understand the pushback. I definitely understand it, because it's a direct threat,
for sure,
in my opinion.
Yeah, we're coming to a head on this stuff for sure. It's inevitable, and some nation states are going to approach it super heavy-handed. Some will identify it as an opportunity to get ahead, especially on like innovation and entrepreneurial standpoint. But it's kind of, in my opinion, one of those things, like, not only is the snowball started to roll, it's picking up speed significantly. I don't see this stuff going anywhere. Even if they wanted to clamp down completely, I'm not even sure that it would be a possibility. If they push this stuff even further underground, will it actually fuel the adoption to some extent? Maybe less users, but but like the technology itself could see like new levels of innovation, especially focused on privacy and whatnot. So it's hard to guess, but it's a very interesting time. And, if nothing else, I think it's really important what this does from what the space, blockchain, the cryptocurrency, and these conversations do from a cultural standpoint is really force people to question what they know or think they know about what money is, what value is, what it means, and like once you start to kind of have that go down that rabbit hole, it really opens up a lot of more questions than answers. But at the same time, I think that's to the benefit of everybody, because it's an eye opener.
Yeah, definitely, man. And it's a battle that's going to continue. I mean, we've got, I just heard about China and their internet firewall blocking access to an Ethereum block explorer, Etherscan. Wow. So it's just interesting. And then you've got Russia, they're looking to ban the use of cryptos to purchase goods and services. So it's just going to be interesting to see how these governments continue to push back, and I want to see, and I'm curious to see how things evolve on the other side. How do we adapt? How do we respond to a lot of these things? So,
yeah, it's interesting times. I mean, we're also seeing obviously like social unrest pick up globally, yep. Across the world. And interestingly, I know that Hong Kong specifically, they were looking at Bitcoin, blockchain, various cryptocurrencies for use in anonymous money transfers or support or whatnot. And there was actually some pushback. They were saying how they felt it wasn't ready yet, or it wasn't really able to satisfy their needs. So that's kind of an interesting thing. It's hard to. Yeah, it's hard to guess where this whole thing may net out, but I believe the more heavy-handed the governments get, kind of like attacking or restricting this stuff, it may actually have a unintended effect of increasing support and interest. But
yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely see. One last thing, I know I've been very critical of Ethereum, and what are your thoughts on the upgrades in the next 2 years? How are things coming along with that? I mean, you're closer to the community than I am as far as
Sure.
Ethereum. What are your thoughts about the upgrades and so on and so forth? And how does that affect, if anything, any kind of impact on Pillar in their project, in your project?
Nothing immediate, and also we are potentially 2 years away from this stuff, so hard to guess where we actually may net out. There's 8 different teams, I believe, coordinating on this stuff. It's right. A huge effort, right?
Right.
There's a lot of questions around the composability nature, which has become a large theme for Ethereum, especially when it comes to DeFi. And a lot of the growth and adoption there, which has also been a huge success story for kind of Ethereum's blockchain and community. I haven't put too much focus on it in terms of because 2 years in blockchain space, as you know, is 10.
Yeah.
And how quickly things can evolve as well and
right.
change. I'm not too concerned. There's tremendously smart people working on all of this stuff. Generally, Ethereum has by far the largest development community, pushing even harder to grow that. Gitcoin and Joseph Lubin have talked about how 1 million devs is kind of their next big goal. I'd love to see the same focus on users, but I understand the value of kind of absorbing as many.
That's the thing. I think you actually do need devs first.
Sure.
But at the same, it's a chicken and an egg situation, because you do need the users as well. But I think we still have a PR problem in blockchain. And we have a user experience problem still in blockchain. Huge user experience problem. It's too difficult for the everyday average Joe to utilize any blockchain, whether it be EOS, Ethereum, whatever. The I guess the barrier is still so high, technically speaking, that there has to be more improvements in those categories.
And arguably value too. Like,
yeah,
that if the value was strong enough, a lot of that UX challenge or those hurdles, people would be willing to jump over to, for that value. A lot of us who got in early, driven by the idealist side of it and the potential of decentralization and privacy preserving technology and all these things. Then there's obviously the speculative benefits, right? So you get people who are willing to go through that stuff because they see the potential upside from a profit standpoint. But we really need to get the utility and the end user kind of use cases out there and just demonstrate the value. Because purely just like digital asset transfer and value exchange is not really a huge carrot, if you will, because we already, especially in Western cultures and societies, we have Venmo, we have Chase Quick Pay, we have PayPal, we have all these various options.
Exactly what I was saying on I think I was on a live stream over the weekend. I said the same thing. Like, the competition is fierce because it's so easy for individuals just to use what they have. They don't care about decentralization per se. The average person doesn't.
Right. The principles of it are not enough to bring in the masses. No. Right.
No.
Yeah. And we have the challenger banks, right? All these new banks popping up, the Revoluts, the Monzos, there's a ton of them. And they're going to be quick to bridge that, and you've already seen it with like Robinhood and Cash App and some of these others where you can now, it's just another asset offering within like the suite of services.
Right.
Which, I mean, also, there's an argument around like we should be focusing on the communities and the regions and the demographics that need this stuff, that actually, the Argentinas, the Venezuelas.
Maybe we should.
Yeah.
Maybe that, because I don't see it happening. I don't see us taking much market share from first world consumers at this point. So, and I've said that. I've been a person on that side of things when it comes to crypto adoption. I think it's going to be from the bottom up,
right?
From countries that really need it first, and then possibly spread to first world. So
it would help if some of these countries, like Western countries, would embrace it fully and kind of get behind it and like spur the innovation and support it, because obviously that opens all sorts of doors that wouldn't, versus us trying to kind of like crawl our way through and define it for ourselves or make moves and possibly misstep because there's not clear guidance, like I mentioned. So I think, we know obviously a lot of South American countries are in need of this, Central American, African, Eastern European, potentially. Like, there's so many possibilities. And for us too, on the identity side, there's a lot of, we know how to provide these identity solutions, but where's the value and the end benefit now that I can store my information, I have control of it? Where are there data economies, exchanges, are brands kind of thinking about how they can directly interface with users and in turn, in exchange for them sharing some information, incentivize them, kind of cut out the middleman, whether that be a advertiser or a whatnot. And so it's going to take time for people to really kind of start to explore and see the value in these potential use cases, which then brings benefit to end user as well, and opens up those opportunities. So.
Yeah, I agree, man. So it's definitely been a pleasure to have Drew Hardin from Pillar Project on, guys. If you want to get in touch with him, how can they reach you, Drew?
Best place, probably Twitter, at Drew Harding. Feel free to follow or send me a DM. Always down to chat. If you're interested in the DAO thing, I'd also suggest checking out the Meta Cartel community. Some pretty interesting stuff around there. And
that's metacartel.org for you guys if you want to visit that. All right, that sounds good, man. It's always a pleasure having you on, Drew. It's your boy Crypto Blood, and we're gonna rock out to this DJ Shadow.
Thanks again.
Been used to. All right. We out. Holla.